But when you think about our history, the worst maritime disaster in our history was 2004 tsunami. In that case, globally, about 227,898 people died from 14 countries. At that time, it triggered about 30 meters height waves. But in Sri Lanka alone, we lost about 35,000 lives. That's the worst maritime disaster ever happened in 21st century. But if you go to the man-made maritime disasters, I listed only 5 here that recorded the death toll more than 1,500, including Titanic. So in 1987, Philippines, one ferry capsized and it hit with another tanker, killing 4,386 people. In China, in another ship accident that took about 3,920 lives. In Canada, in well-known Mont Blanc incident, a ship blasted, the ship laden with full of explosives, that blasted and took about 2,000 lives. And UK, Titanic case, well-known case. In that case, we lost about 1,517 deaths. In China, again another steamer, it sank and again took 1,500 lives. Those are the worst maritime disasters and top 5 according to the death toll. But in Sri Lanka, we faced 2004 tsunami, we know it. But then it goes to maritime sector. Very recently, we near missed one of the largest maritime disasters. That's from MS Danila in 2007 April. One of the 4th largest vessel at that time, it caught fire, the same sort of fire. Unfortunately, we were able to douse the fire. It was a kind of near-missed situation. Then, New Diamond case. You know how much oil it was containing, millions of tons of oil, crude oil. But fortunately, we were able to control the situation and they took the ship into their countries finally. Then, this is the pollution which occurred during New Diamond ship incident. You can see the air pollution. And again, oil pollution. You can see the oil slick. And again, oil all over. And this oil pollution happened during New Diamond incident. Then, the well-known, our topic today is the Express Pearl issue. This is how we saw, myself, my chairperson was there. This is how we saw Express Pearl at the very first glance. When we went there, it was like this. These pictures were taken from the same date. The following morning, the fire erupted from this area. It's a very minor fire. But from the distance, this is a fire, the yellowish smoke, how it emitted. It is well known that this fire triggered by nitric acid, and this is how it observed from the distance. And with the time, the fire broke out without any control. Ultimately, it took the whole ship, and ultimately, ship became a wreck. So at present, this is how the wreck looks like. The ship is sitting on 20 meters depth, and all the above deck cargo and everything washed off. Now below deck and everything beyond, within the ship hull, is remaining submerged as a wreck. So this is how you see Express Pearl at present. So within this incident, what we observed air pollution, thermal pollution, chemical and physical pollution from rubble and debris, and again nurdles, and plastic pollution, virgin plastic, and again if you go to further details, microplastics, and again oil and some chemical artificial fiber pollution was observed. So some examples, you can see air pollution, and this is high, superheated water around the ship, and solid debris slowly falling out, making solid waste, solid pollution there. And if you look at this plume, you can see here clearly, This is chemical plume with sediments around the ship, emitting from the ship. And again, this oil slick, clearly emitting and slowly dispersing into the northern part of the country towards Negombo side. And on the beaches, this is what we saw. Burnt and virgin plastics, and again, burnt debris. So that's a pollution caused by express pearl. And what sort of impact we anticipate from this pollution is, first thing is the mechanical impacts, from solid waste. And eutrophication from all the chemicals and other substances released from the ship. Eutrophication. And saphrogenic impacts means some sort of tissue decomposing. Animal dying because of these chemicals and the chemical toxicity. Especially with the heavy metals and PAH and other chemical release from the ship, especially cargoes. And again, mutagenic and carcinogenic impacts that's caused to starting from plankton to higher animals. Those are the impacts we expect from this ship accident. So I'll start with planktons. So zooplanktons, if I start with zooplankton, such as copepods, euphasids, and mysids, they accumulate hydrocarbons directly from seawater. How? They ingest oil droplets. At the same time, they ingest oil-contaminated food. And that causes not only mortality, that causes their DNA damage, and that causes damages to their reproductive systems and cause some abnormalities. So we know that zooplankton are the important food source, especially for whales, and that's the building brick for all food webs and food chains. So if somebody hit to this very base, it means the food webs, food chains, and our food security is in jeopardy. So not only that, the chemicals released from oil and other chemical substances from the oil, from the ship, especially PAH, that enter into food webs and food chain. Especially that also cause huge damages to our phytoplankton communities. So there are lots of research, published papers available. So accumulation of pH occurs in all marine organisms, from plankton to higher predators. And they are especially stored in liver and other fatty acid stored areas, especially in fish, liver and bile. They accumulate this pH. At the same time, the LD values of this pH are very low. It means they are really toxic. On the other hand, these planktons are highly lipophilic. It means they absorb them very quickly and assimilate or accumulate this in their tissues. Then moving to benthic other invertebrates. So normally, benthic invertebrates, they accumulate petroleum hydrocarbons from water, if not from contaminated sediments, and again from food. Therefore, they are adversely affected because most of them are attached, sessile, they cannot move around. For example, bivalves, they are very active filter feeders. They accumulate. And then they transfer them to their predators. Right? Then marine birds especially, they rely on bivalves and other planktonic fish. Therefore, these marine birds, they directly get the dose. At the same time, these marine benthic organisms are the first to be killed. At the same time, they are the slowest to recover in our marine environment. In intertidal ecosystem, the areas between high tide and low tide, those are the areas first hit. At the same time, those are the areas very quickly washed off because of the tidal variation. But if you go to subtidal areas, below the water areas, they take some time to receive the pollutants. At the same time, they take more time to recover. Therefore, subtidal areas you will see quick recovery. Sorry, in intertidal area, you will see a quick recovery, but in subtidal area, the damage persists. It's not months, depending on the chemical, depending on the pollutants. It's years and years, sometimes decades. So from here, you can see this is the subtidal area. This is intertidal area. This is underneath here is the subtidal area. So therefore, it takes more time. So we don't know if we still we have a chance to sample this area to observe the pollutants there. So invertebrate populations such as amphipods and sandhoppers, aplisca, and other quiet, they are very sensitive to the pollution. For various reasons, they are slow to repopulate and recover. On the other hand, marine invertebrates are unique living organisms with different aspects, and they have been explored as models, and we can still use them as models to understand what are the real impact of these pollutants that create damages to our coastal waters. Then I move to coral reefs, but unfortunately in this area, all the coral reefs in the shallow areas are very, those are Miocene or dead reefs, but there's no living corals on the top of that. But around the ship, there are some submerged reefs at 20 meters depth, sometimes 15 to 20 meters depth. There are reef ridges are there. But in the case, as far as these pollutants stay afloat on the surface, coral reefs are safe. But with the density, with the time when they weather, when they start sinking, the coral reef get the real heat. You can see from here. So oil slick is in this picture. Oil slick is on the surface. The coral reefs are quite safe. But soon as we start, dispersing the oil slick, okay, when we start adding some chemicals, with the weathering process, when the chemicals sink to the bottom, then coral reefs get damaged. So now we have planned to go to this reef to understand the current situation. But at the moment, we don't have any idea the real damage caused to the coral reefs and seagrasses beds and other sandy bottoms around the ship. Then the fish. So it's a bit controversial here. So we should know that most fish, even in heavily contaminated environment, do not accumulate and retain petroleum hydrocarbons. They don't consume them. For example, the petroleum hydrocarbons are, I put it here, benzene, toluene, xylene, naphthalene, and other extractions we take from crude oils. But they take other pollutants like PAH and other heavy metals, they absorb, but they never retain petroleum hydrocarbons in their body. Therefore, they are not likely to transfer them to predators. I am referring to petroleum hydrocarbons in this case, right? Therefore, no serious threat is predicted. But generally, marine carnivores are inefficient assimilators of petroleum compounds in food. For this reason, and because of all prey species are able to release hydrocarbons from their tissues, the marine food chain bioaccumulation does not occur when we regard to petroleum hydrocarbons. But if you think about other chemicals and pollutants, there's always, in the marine system, we can observe, we can detect marine bioaccumulations. Thus, the indirect correlation between marine mammals' trophic levels and the concentration of this inverse correlation is always there. You can see others, they bioaccumulate, but not petroleum hydrocarbons. Then the next issue is the turtles. We discuss a lot about turtles. Here you can see a turtle is swimming across a pollutant plume, I would say. So when they are exposed to this pollution, the pollutants can get into these turtles through skin, lungs, guts, sense organs, and nesting beaches. These are the entry points. But these are the impacts. But somehow with the time if you go through this whole diagram, you will see they get very slow, very pathetic death. It's not sudden death. So that's why it took 2-3 weeks to see first dead turtles on our waters. But they got acute heat when they exposed to superheat water. But through this process, it takes some more time. So these are how these turtles get the impact for various marine pollution issues. Then impacts of seabirds. Since Sampath is here, I'm happy. So one of the major route for exposure, physical contact usually affects birds, because birds mainly depending on pelagic fish, especially seabirds. They are highly carnivore. But on the other hand, when the seabirds are affected, it's always on the media, right? Our volunteers, they go and collect seabirds and try to recover them, wash them, lots of issues. Therefore, it's a kind of media concern is always there when seabirds are hit. But the issue is that the approximate number of seabirds casualties involved in many major cases have only been estimated. We cannot take exact values of the numbers of seabird casualty, right? Because they are highly migratory. They swim everywhere. They fly everywhere. Therefore, this is because unknown number of oil damaged seabirds may die at sea and they don't reach the coast. Therefore, the counts are always, bit speculative, not always accurate. So absorption of organic toxic chemicals by seabirds and transfer to marine organisms are through ingestion is very much proved, especially in other countries, especially puffins, right? And shearwaters here. So one Japanese study, they found that, especially puffins, they accumulate PBDEs, polybrominated diphenyl ethers, which are not present in natural prey of the birds. But if we compare the bird, dropping at least, if we can find something alien, then we can easily understand that these alien pollutants are most probably from express pearl, or maybe express pearl related issue. Then impact on marine mammals. I go very quickly through this, I had a lot to discuss here. So normally marine mammals, if they physically contact oil and chemicals, if they are furred animals, but fortunately we don't have any furred marine animals, right? So they get hypothermia, or they might get drowning, or something smothering with oil, right? And sometimes when they exposed to oil, sometimes they groom themselves to clean them. To that grooming process, the oil sometimes get ingested into their alimentary canals. But animals with smooth surfaces, like whales and dolphins, this is what we observed in our waters. They have an advantage, especially for oil, because they have a fever tendency to adhere to their surfaces, especially oil. But on the other hand, we know that, especially baleen whales, they collect food from the water surface. They are filter feeders. So when they filter feeders, they ingest oil-contaminated or chemical-contaminated food and chemical slick. At the same time, they enter into their alimentary canal. At the same time, all their baleen plates and internal organs get affected. So when marine mammals encounter chemical oil, they are likely to inhale volatile substances, especially volatile hydrocarbons, because these chemicals, they are highly evaporating. In fact, the top carnivores feed on larger pelagic species. For example, killer whales are less likely to expose to petroleum in their food than other species. They are feeding on planktons, right? So carnivores who are really feeding on plankton, they are very much likely to get more pollutants than marine mammals who are really depending on feeding on large predators. So chronic exposure to chemicals, oil resulted in variety of responses such as melanosis, it means the discoloration of body, and erratic swimming, loss of equilibrium, reduced mobility, and startle response that really caused them, again like turtles, a slow death. Right? You can see how this, how they filter feed on the surface. They are skim feeders. And volatile fractions contain toxic monoaromatic hydrocarbon, for example, benzene, toluene, and xylenes, and low molecular weight aliphatics and anesthetic properties they are having. So these whales, when they inhale these hydrocarbons, and it becomes really potentially harmful for them. The inhalation of these concentrated chemical vapors can cause the inflammation of and damage to their mucous membranes of airways, lung congestion, or even pneumonia conditions. But volatile benzene and toluene, which can be inhaled, can be transferred rapidly from the bloodstream into the lungs. And again, they can accumulate from the blood into the brain and liver. That really become lethal in the long term. And it causes neurological disorders and liver damage that definitely cause deaths for them. So therefore, many marine mammals are probably poor accumulators to oil directly from the solutions or dispersion in the water column. This is because the skin of cetaceans especially are generally impermeable to oil. In addition, most marine mammals, they do not drink seawater directly, but they get seawater through their food. Therefore, a significant accumulation of hydrocarbons by this route is unlikely to occur in larger marine mammals' body. You can see some examples from even this blue whale died. So, you have to find the real cause of the death. Then, impact on marine plants. So, these plants are affected by the oil in which they come into direct contact. It causes it becomes phytotoxicities of oil or chemicals, and if not the combination of these both two, especially in pH pollution. Symptoms like chlorosis, less chlorophyll in their tissues, yellowing, growth reduction, and perturbations in development parameters, they were visually observed, especially in marine plants. And on the other hand, a significant bioaccumulation of PAH in shoot tissues is also visible or possible, even at very low levels of these contaminants. Right. Then the last one is the impact on cyanobacteria and other microorganisms. So cyanobacteria are the numerous factors that determine this microbial response, especially the concentration of these pollutants and their type and the weather, the temperature, everything is responsible for their impact. So these include the oil chemical composition and degree of dilution, weathering, as well as the environmental condition, especially the temperature and nutrient concentrations. When crude oil is introduced to the seawater, the microbial community changes and consists of multiple coexist. They start coexist with, especially cyanobacteria, with oil. Not only oil, sometimes they coexist with pH. A network of direct and indirect relationships can be observed between species and among species. So some of the interactions involve chemical, hydrocarbon, and plastic biodegradation. For example, alcanivorax species, they degrade straight chain and branch alkaline are increased and become more abundant. So this species, if they can observe this species, we can use this as a bioindicator in marine environments. And a cycloclasticus species that really degrade PAH. Therefore, more we take to get samples, more we lose our evidences because they start degrading those pollutants. On the other hand, the other genera of obligate alkaline degraders such as Oilobacter and Oceanospiralis, they are abundantly detected in oil-rich marine environments. They really degrade oil, and sometimes they degrade pH also. So So microassay analysis of 16S RNA genes have revealed that gamma photobacteria were enriched in marine environments that are historically exposed to frequent episodic episodic or natural oil spills. Therefore, we can use these species either to dilute the damage or pollution, or to use as bioindicators. So then, you know, when after most of the crude oil or chemical spill, always is followed by harmful algal blooms, because most of the times these pollutants, they kill ciliates, because these ciliates are the predators in marine environment. So once these predators are removed, these cyanobacteria, they take the advantage. They start blooming in trillions. So they convert into HABs, so harmful algal blooms. So those are the so in here also we can expect harmful algal blooms or at least algal blooms. But in our case, the issue is that we have lots of currents that flush all, you know, these oil contents and even these bacteria away from the site. So then the microplastic issue. There are lots of, you know, cases that confirm that microplastic itself damage animals. At the same time, microplastic again act as a carrier for pollutants. Therefore, microplastic always boosts pollution and pollution impact, especially animals like bivalves, that they are very abundant in coastal areas in the impacted area, and even some mysid shrimps and even some lobsters. Not only that, even some planktons, they accumulate microplastic. Through that, they take microplastic through food chains and food webs, but at the same time, they help to biomagnify these pollutants at the higher levels. These are some examples. Therefore, there are lots of evidence that microplastic take heavy metals, and therefore we can conclude that microplastic as a vector. So those are the impacts definitely we can observe, expect in regard to biological aspects of our environment. The last one is this artificial fiber. So they are like a plume, like a cloud spreading all over the world, all over the area. So they are very fine fibers. You can see from here, very fine artificial fibers. So when they settle on a coral reef, when they settle on a rocky area, it's very difficult to remove. But when it takes 1 or 2 weeks, other coralline algae, even corals, they start overgrowing, embedding these fibers into their bodies. So then it causes another set of problems. So those are the pollution and pollutants we observed in relation to marine biological aspects in this area. So what is the, our next step? So we know that, Madam Chairperson MIPA, so the ship is salvaged. There's a very, there's a big opportunity for us to take exact data. Because when they take out all the containers, we can record everything from A to Z, right? We definitely should establish a 24/7 observation center on the scene, right? Because the containers coming out with all the pollutants. So we don't need to go somewhere and check because pollutants, everything is visible, right? Therefore, take this chance, do video recording, take photographic evidence, get samples as much as possible. We are not late now, right? Now, if we can collect these samples directly from the ship, directly from the containers, there's no, second, we don't need to go through a bigger process to confirm that these pollutants are from the ship, because we collect samples from containers themselves, right? So that's the first step I would really share with you. And let's start discussing this openly with the general public, but without hampering the legal process, because we don't want to, hamper our legal process, because we all work to the country, because they have done the damage. We cannot recover it. But what we can do is we can take some compensation just to, again, to do some environmental restoration. So therefore, definitely we have to make full focus on our legal process. But while focusing on that, we can still share some basic information like this with general public. Then we can avoid the ambiguity, right? We can give proper idea about what is happening, what we have done, because we are in the real track. Though it takes some time, as scientists we cannot take data within 1 or 2 days time. Sometimes it takes decades, sometimes millions, sometimes centuries to take some ideas. Therefore, let's do that. And don't wait for passive sampling. Let's go for active sampling, because in the case of turtles and dolphins, we did passive sampling. We wait until they come to the beach, and we collected them, and we sent them to biopsies and post-mortem. Then what their conclusion is almost decomposed beyond the recognition, internal organs. But if you do active sampling, at least through fishermen, at least through other shipping, at least by sending our students out, then we can collect some live samples but still damaged, right? Then we can have proper idea about the cause of the death. But at the moment, always say we cannot find the cause of the death because all are decomposed beyond the recognition. That's the thing we can do. But in statistics, in scientific research, we always depending on the probability factor, 99%, 95%. But in this case, we have to be 100% sure, because this is in legal process, right? In the courts, you have to tell something, you have to confirm something without doubt. Therefore, it's a real threat is there. Therefore, let's get together and to collect proper samples with take the proper chance, and go with the strong case. And again, to always have controls for all the data, all the samples. Then we can say, okay, this is our control, then this is the damage. So if we have some data or samples without controls, we cannot really prove that, because now we are fighting at the court, because whatever we tell or understand here, everything will be determined at the courts. Therefore, always try to have controls with impact. Then we can say before, after, right? So these are the things definitely we can do. Then regarding the last, international cooperation. So, contact British, because we all, in Sri Lanka, lots of people, they compared our incident with British petroleum issue. Then if possible, contact them. Ask them how they did it, especially the environmental factors, groups, right? Then take some ideas. And how to link the deaths to pollution to ship is ongoing. Then Earth observation data from IORA, countries like the agencies like IORA. But in that case, we have to pay. But we have lots of international collaborations, diplomatic links we are having. But still, in the case of this calamity, we had to pay for some data. Why should we, right? So why can't we keep some sort of understanding between countries? If this sort of situation, why can't they share those even critical information with us free of charge? Why should we pay for them, right? This is not for something commercial. And again, the baseline information, as Devaka mentioned. So most of the places we are lacking of baseline information. Let's collect some baseline information, because the shipping sector is developing very fast, right? And lots of ships will come, with larger ships will come. Therefore, we can expect some more marine disasters like we are not expecting, but it will happen. We have to be prepared, right? And let's be strong from legal aspects, right? And on the other hand, last, regarding nurdle collection, nurdle cleanup, now we are experts. We can even teach other countries about how to clean nurdles, right? So that is how we can exchange our ideas. So that is all from me for the moment. The rest, according to your questions, during the discussions. Thank you so much.